Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is American Psycho. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of American Psycho with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself if you are interested. Now let's get back to the review. American Psycho is a 1991 novel by the American writer Bret, Easton, Ellis. To me, Ellis is kind of Mozart of writing, a wonder kid. I am probably exaggerating, but his two best novels, American Psycho and Less Than Zero, were written and published while he was still in his 20s. After reading American Psycho, I wondered about Ellis, his psychology, the mind that could produce the most disturbing, violent, and disgusting descriptions I have ever read. I think he was also worried about being judged and labeled, and for a long time he has claimed that the title character was based on his father. But after a couple of decades, he admitted to the truth. I think I was too afraid to talk about how much American Psycho was about me. What is American Psycho about? It is about violent fantasies and needs brought by feelings of loneliness and disconnection, an extreme version of the inner conflict that many people suffer from, and its external, extreme manifestations. There is a duality in all of us which has to be balanced. Basically, we are living a superficial and material existence and have to harmonize or complement it with hidden psychological desires, dealing with the conflict between whom the society forces us to be and who we might want to be. And later, my macabre joy sours, and I am weeping for myself, unable to find solace in any of this, crying out, sobbing, I just want to be loved, cursing the earth and everything I have been taught. Principles, distinctions, choices, morals, compromises, knowledge, unity, prayer. All of it was wrong, without any final purpose. There's the desperation of emotional numbness created by the insincerity of who we pretend to be, not being able to express our real selves, and it makes us go further and further to the extremes in a desperate effort to feel anything, so we can try to fill the hollow space inside of us. A bit of the plot. The anti-hero and the narrator of the novel is a young man working as an investment banker on Wall Street named Patrick Bateman. Bateman starts off describing his superficial existence as part of Manhattan's upper society, a WASP world with its polite anti-Semitism and racism. He talks about his nightly outings with his associates, the shallow relationship with a rich girl, his cosmetic routine to keep himself beautiful, his designer wardrobe and furnishing of his apartment, his taste in music, and then he divulges his more obscure side, which includes his favorite pastime, torturing, mutilating, and killing people, especially women. Bateman kills one of his co-workers, Paul Owen, quarters his body, and converts Owen's apartment into a type of torture chamber where he indulges in his dark and violent fantasies. He kills a few prostitutes and acquaintances during their sexual play, and also some strangers while going about with his conventional routine. But eventually, it all starts to catch up to him, and he has to face the consequences of his actions and fantasies. And that's the basic plot. What are my thoughts about American Psycho? It is a rather powerful description of what I would call psychological perversion of our Western civilization and its manifestation in the real world. It shows the effects of extreme pressures on an individual self-applied but created by the modern society. There is no use in denying it. It has been a bad week. I have started drinking my own urine. I laugh spontaneously at nothing. Sometimes I sleep under my futon. I am flossing my teeth constantly until my gums are aching and my mouth tastes like blood. Before dinner last night at 1500 with Reed Goodrich and Jason Rust, I was almost caught at the Federal Express in Times Square trying to send the mother of one of the girls I killed last week what might be a dried-up brown heart. The writer uses the 1980s New York's yuppie culture to make his point. The title character, Patrick Bateman, represents the upper echelon of it and the most extreme version. He comes from a wealthy family, is well educated, and represents the culture of excess with its expensive taste and constant focus on the material and physical. The book is a first-person narration, and we get a pretty good and seemingly honest psychological self-portrait of the protagonist. Where there was nature and earth, life and water, I saw a desert landscape that was unending, resembling some sort of crater, so devoid of reason and light and spirit that the mind could not grasp it on any sort of conscious level, and if you came close, the mind would reel backward, unable to take it in. It was a vision so clear and real and vital to me that in its purity it was almost abstract. This was what I could understand. This was how I lived my life, what I constructed my movement around, how I dealt with the tangible. This was the geography around which my reality resolved. It did not occur to me, ever, that people were good, or that a man was capable of change, or that the world could be a better place through one's taking pleasure in a feel, or a look, or a gesture of receiving another person's love or kindness. Nothing was affirmative. The term generosity of spirit applied to nothing, was a cliché, was some kind of bad joke. Bateman's outlet is violence, which is a result of pressures in his life, as I mentioned before, mostly self-created and self-applied. Well, the society helps, but how he deals with it is his own decision. He's a psychopath, but the question is it genetic or the result of his upbringing and environment? The book implies it is a mix of both, having a psychological predisposition, which is brought to surface by the social circumstances. Bateman seems to be a creation and response to the society he inhabits. Being pretty superficial and shallow, he has a profound intellectual side, and he reflects on his actions and even rationalizes them in his own twisted way. This is true. The world is better off with some people gone. Our lives are not all interconnected. The theory is crack. Some people truly do not need to be here. And reflection is useless. The world is senseless. Evil is its only permanence. God is not alive. Love cannot be trusted. Surface, surface, surface was all that anyone found meaning in. This was civilization as I saw it, colossal and jagged. Bateman sees others as nothing more than physical beings, and because of it is always focused on what they are wearing or what kind of body they have. This is caused by a lack of empathy and compassion in him, and it allows him to do the seemingly senseless violence. Also, because he is not able to empathize, he probably sees everybody as himself a monster. I think his lack of empathy is brilliantly portrayed by the author in the way Bateman equally and casually describes his murders and tortures and his music preferences. The descriptions of the violence in the book probably are the most distasteful and repulsive written in a published book. Maybe I just don't read enough of this kind of literature. I wonder if all the bloodshed and cruelty was necessary to give deeper depth and understanding to Bateman's personality, Or was it just a shock element to make the book more memorable? Maybe both, but I think it went a bit too far to make its point. Then again, the book's purpose wasn't only social critique, but also the author's own psychological struggle. The plot focuses on the specific social and professional circles and individual psychopaths roaming among us. Based on my observations, there are a lot of them, psychopaths, and their percentage increases as you move up the social ladder. Don't be fooled by the public face they cultivate. They know some things about ourselves are better kept only to ourselves. "He's the boy next door, aren't you, honey?" "No, I'm not," I whisper to myself. "I'm a fucking evil psychopath." The book heavily criticizes and ridiculizes materialism, with its most obvious display, consumerism. It portrays the 1980s decadent yuppie culture with its symbols, Ronald Reagan in power, the king of junk bonds, Michael Milken, who symbolized never enough attitude and was responsible for raiding and dismembering many American companies, and Bateman's personal hero and the darling of the 80s, Donald Trump. I wonder if this fictional association was ever used by any of Trump's political opponents. Lately, Ellis claimed that the 2016 election was American Psycho becoming president. Anyway, I don't see the 80s as an isolated epoch, but rather a beginning of moral decline. People learned to exploit the system in large numbers and mostly went unpunished. Also the shift toward uncontrolled materialism and consumerism, which continues. I know the younger generation tries to convince us that it is the fault of the boomers and they are different and how much they care for the environment, poverty, and want no more oil drilling, etc., etc., etc. All of it while traveling uncontrollably by air, many in private jets, buying fast fashion wardrobe that they will only use once and then toss it out, and paying for it with the energy drainer and squanderer Bitcoin. I wonder if the 80s shift had something to do with the society entering the age of communication, information overload with the arrival of cable TV, personal computers, then internet, social media, smartphones, etc., etc. There's also the beginning of America's obsession with sensationalism, shown through Bateman's regularly watching morning talk shows with their exaggeration of the topics. Bigfoot was interviewed on the Patty Winters show this morning, and to my shock, I found him surprisingly articulate and charming. And there are the videotapes, which aided in proliferation of pornography and are an important part of Bateman's life. All of it seems to symbolize the 80s and the beginning of our moral downslide. We probably were already in a moral downfall for a long time, but in the 80s we started to accelerate it, and with the subsequent introduction of all the new social technologies, it became more visible. Maybe the whole idea of morality is pretty relative, and an argument can be made that morality was never a social trend, but limited to a few individuals. Another interesting thing that the book seems to touch on is America's obsession with competition. Bateman and his acquaintances are always competing with each other, what they wear, who they know, the restaurants they frequent, where they live, etc., etc. There is a moment of sheer terror when I discover Paul's apartment overlooks the park. I think there is no more cynical illustration of their competitive attitude than when they are comparing their business cards. And all this competing breeds envy and insecurity and seeing others as somewhat of the enemy, and it leads Bateman to commit more violence. I remember being in a martial arts tournament somewhere in the Midwest when I was a teenager, and the parents of my American opponent yelling, kill him, and it sounded so severe for something I didn't consider that important. And this was my introduction to America's competitive extremism. We like to point to the other side's extremism, but to me we seem as extreme. Well, maybe not about religion, but about sports, fame, money, etc. Perhaps the lesson from the book is that any form of extremism is detrimental to the individual and society. To sum it up, American Psycho is nihilism gone wild, something Nietzsche was predicting at the end of the 19th century. He himself said that it would be 200 years before we could understand his writings, and perhaps we are starting to see and comprehend what he was saying. The book is a somewhat superficial and satiric reflection on the serious subject of social pressures causing the general moral decline of the society. The plot is full of action, but at the same time very repetitive, violent encounter, night out, observing of what others are wearing, and this cycle repeated various times. Maybe because our lives in general are pretty repetitive. I think, in large part, the book is still pretty relevant today, and it reflects contemporary society as well. Looking at the social challenges we are facing, I see the 80s with its mantra, greed is good, as a kind of starting point to where we are today. How much more extreme, insensitive, and callous to violence we have become. And on the surface, it might seem we have improved on some social problems so bluntly displayed by the book's characters, but maybe we just became better at disguising them. There is the human duality, two-face, so much more present today because of social media's constant scrutiny over our lives, which is the cause and simultaneously result of growing restrictions over self-expression, a vicious circle driving us in the wrong direction. Bateman is, visibly, very superficial, but at the same time capable of some profound thoughts and reflections. There wasn't a clear, identifiable emotion within me, except for greed and possibly total disgust. I had all the characteristics of a human being, flesh, blood, skin, hair, but my depersonalization was so intense, had gone so deep, that the normal ability to feel compassion had been eradicated, the victim of a slow, purposeful erasure. I was simply imitating reality, a rough resemblance of a human being, with only a dim corner of my mind functioning. Something horrible was happening, and yet I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't put my finger on it. Unfortunately, I think today many people are not capable of deep self-criticism, maybe because behavior that would be considered eccentric in the past is considered normal today, and it is becoming publicly accepted part of the American society. There's something disturbing and contradictory about the American society that goes against, but at the same time complements the whole idea of the American dream, pursuing happiness. For me, American Psycho is somewhat reminiscent of No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai, the disconnection from and doubting of one's own humanity. There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there. It is a more extreme version of No Longer Human, which usually is a case with American remakes, but in contrast to the protagonist in the Dazai's novel, Bateman has much more compelling reasons to question his humanity, his violent instincts and actions. I personally preferred the other book since it was more psychological and vague, but then again, American Psycho is a book written by a young man, so more graphic, obvious, and direct. Many people read the book after seeing the film adaptation, which I think was pretty well done, with some great acting from Christian Bale portraying Patrick Bateman, but the movie doesn't go as far as the book, and because of it, some might consider it superior to the book since it skips a lot of the repetitive stuff that might not have been necessary. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transformed into a hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A naturally tan hide I buy from a tanner in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so the top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First I designed the cover, which what I did here. I used this painting of a reptile-like being wearing suit and a tie, kind of an image of Patrick Bateman, his inner persona. This is the back with the blurb, and inside front cover I printed a quote from the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel, and for every 100 donations I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.